What's going on, guys? I'm Tommy, and I'm coming at you with an action figure review. Today I'm going to be reviewing Hasbro The Vintage Collection Obi-Wan Kenobi Utapau and Airborne Clone Trooper 212th Battalion from Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. An updated Revenge of the Sith Obi-Wan Kenobi was on my top 10 for my last figure standing most wanted from 2025. I was so ecstatic to see that Hasbro finally, after years and years and years, updated Obi-Wan Kenobi in this iconic look. In addition to that, we get a brand new clone trooper that hasn't been made since 2007. That being the 212th Airborne, or the Beehive Trooper as he was originally called when the movie first came out. I'm so excited to get this set opened and to check it out for you today. I got this on a pre-order through Walmart's app. I absolutely despise using Walmart, but unfortunately they get exclusives, and this happened to be a Walmart exclusive for 2026. Very much a bummer that I had to order through them, and of course, you know, things never go smoothly when you pre-order things through Walmart. If you want to hear more about that, check out my post that I made when I got this one in the mail on my Blitz Bounties Instagram page, or over on the Blitz Transmissions Discord. But without further ado, let's take a look at the set. So this is the standard style of 2-pack packaging that they do when both the figures inside are carded. We get this kind of box set look for the packaging here. On the front of the box, we get the Star Wars logo with the Revenge of the Sith logo inside there. We have our little racetrack here with the names of the characters, as well as this beautiful glam shot with this great scenery of both the figures. They both look amazing. And then right here it says include in about 1,000 different languages, and you can see both the figures on their respective card backs. Down below, we have the Kenner logo, and then they tell you there are 2 action figures inside in about 1,000 different languages. On the little tab up here, we have our 4+ and our warnings. On this side of the box, we have a great glam shot of the 212th Airborne once again. On the back of the box, you can see we've got a Starfield background, and once again, images of both of the figures on their respective card backs, our Vintage Collection logo, and then we have all our legalese. Guys, please don't feed these action figures to your babies, okay? On this side of the box, we have our glam shot with Obi-Wan looking amazing once again. On the bottom of the box, we have even more legalese, and on the top of the box, we have our Revenge of the Sith logo and our little icons for both the characters again. That about wraps it up for the packaging. I'm super excited to check out the card backs. Alright guys, here are both of the figures on their respective card backs, and I have to say, they look absolutely amazing. We'll start off with Obi-Wan here. You can see on the card back again, these both come with unpunched cards here. So we do have our Revenge of the Sith logo, we have our name of the character in the name pill, a really nice glam shot of Obi-Wan here. I believe this is one of the promo images from the movie, and then we have the Kenner logo at the bottom. You can see our figure with his accessories in the bubble, and then on the back of the card back here, you can also see we have he is VC number 398. We have a glam shot of the figure in front of the card back, the character name, and then a bio in about 1,000 different languages. This bio reads, on the planet Utapau, General Obi-Wan Kenobi faced General Grievous and his 4 imposing lightsabers. Upon defeating Grievous, he escaped in the Warlord Starfighter. Down below that, we have our Vintage Collection logo and even more legalese. Guys, again, do not feed Obi-Wan to your babies. Moving on to our 212th Airborne clone here, we've got once again, same setup here, our warning, our Revenge of the Sith logo, we've got our character name in the name pill, we have a nice glam shot straight from the movie here and some nice high-res look, and then we also have our character with his accessories in the bubble here, Kenner logo at the bottom, and then on the back of the card back, once again, this is VC number 399. You have your character name, a glam shot of the figure in front of the card back, and once again a bio in about 1,000 different languages. This bio reads, on Clone Commander Cody's orders, the 212th Battalion's specially trained clone paratroopers searched to no avail for their missing former commander, Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then down here we have our Vintage Collection logo, and again, all of our legalese. I'll remind you one more time, don't feed these action figures to your babies. But with that, guys, that's going to wrap up the packaging, so let's get these guys open and we'll check them out. Alright guys, here are both of the figures out of the packaging. Before we take a look at them, let's take a look at their respective accessories here. So one accessory that Obi-Wan comes with that is super cool is this alternate hand for the left hand here. You can see Obi-Wan does come with a force push hand. That is really, really cool. That's something that I don't even expect to get with the vintage collection line. This is done in a really nice shade of plastic. You can see it's got a nice hinge there so that you can actually articulate it when it's on his hand as well and really get that force push look. I think this is fantastic and definitely something that makes this feel like a lot more premium of a release. Obviously, Obi-Wan Kenobi is going to need his lightsaber, so we have his iconic lightsaber from this film. You can see that the hilt is painted really, really nicely. This is all one solid piece. It is all done in this translucent blue plastic here, which I think is a great shade for this lightsaber. And just again, look at the beautiful metallic paint on this lightsaber hilt here. You can see some nice silver as well as some nice glossy black, and then that nice brass color down up towards the emitter. I really, really like the way that this looks. This is done extremely well. In addition to the ignited lightsaber, we also get Obi-Wan's lightsaber hilt without the blade. This is how TVC usually does it. They give you two separate pieces. I prefer this over the way that Black Series does it with those removable blades. You can see that all the same beautiful paint apps are on this one as well, looking very shiny and metallic. You can also see they did sculpt in a peg here, so this can actually go onto his belt. We'll show that later in the review. As for our 212th Airborne, we have two accessories that we should be pretty familiar with by this point with clone troopers in this line. We have, of course, the DC-15 rifle. This is the same sculpt that we're used to. We've seen this plenty of times in the vintage collection here, and it is done in just a dark gray, almost gunmetal looking sculpt. Fantastic sculpt work here. Looks just as it should from the films, and you can see here it's got great sculpted detail, no painted or weathering detail on this accessory whatsoever. And then, of course, we also get our DC-15S carbine here, once again done in that same kind of plastic here, that very dark gray, almost gunmetal look. And you can see lots of great sculpted detail on this as well. No painted detail or weathering on this one either, but again, we've seen this plenty of times in TVC. We should be pretty familiar with this one by now. Alright guys, let's take a look at Obi-Wan first. We'll set the Airborne off to the side. I am super excited to look at Obi-Wan here, and first thing I want to point out is this absolutely immaculate likeness here. This Ewan McGregor likeness is just insane. Looking especially at the fact they printed on his little birthmark on his forehead. That is such a tiny detail I would never expect on a 1/18th scale figure, and this is just amazing. The hair sculpt is great. Look at all the depth and texture of that hair sculpt. When the light hits it in different ways, it really shows all that texture there. And you can see that the face is just done so well. The eyes, you can see the whites of the eyes, the irises, and the pupils. It is just insane. You can see the paint for his mustache and his beard are very nice. You can see on both sides of the face, those go right up to the sideburns there. Those look awesome, and then the eyebrows look great too. Overall, this is truly, I would say, probably the biggest highlight for this figure is just how much he looks exactly like who we see on screen. Now, as far as the outer tunics go, the outer tunics seem to be done on an overlay here. This is something that the Black Series has been doing as of late. These thin, soft, pliable plastic overlays. They're very nice because they offer reuse opportunity for the torsos themselves, meaning that you don't have to do a lot of retooling on the arms and on the other parts of the figure, but doing a quick overlay changes the look of the figure completely. You can see that the layer underneath the outer layer of the tunics is painted in brown, as it should be, and then all of the tunics for the outside here have nice folds and wrinkles in them. You can see that again when those catch the light, just like the hair, they give a lot of depth to the sculpt without offering any paint apps, which this is a costume design I wouldn't expect any paint apps on whatsoever. Now the sleeves are very long. You can see those go down to where the hands are. This is accurate to how a lot of Jedi tunics look in the prequel trilogy, so that's good. As far as the hands go, you can see that the right hand is sculpted with a trigger finger for the so uncivilized moment. Too bad we don't get that blaster with this figure. And then you can see that the left hand is sculpted in a C gripping position, which is great for those two-handed lightsaber holding poses. As far as the belt goes here, you can see that is going to be a soft plastic overlay that's separate from the one that they used for the outer tunics here. The sculpt is done in that same khaki color that the outer tunics are. However, the belt is painted on in a nice dark brown. You can see some gold here for the belt buckle as well as the clasps on either side, and you can also also see on the left side of the belt, they did sculpt in the hole for the peg for that lightsaber hilt. They did a really good job of painting in all the details for Obi-Wan's belt, including these little cartridges, which are painted in a nice shiny silver. All of the boxes around the back are painted in brown, and then you can see on the right side of the belt, we have additional cartridges that are painted in silver, one of them done in that same brass color we saw on the lightsaber hilt. Overall, really, really nice detail there. Now we get to the lower tabards and the lower parts of the tunics here. Now, this is something that I tend to prefer when it comes to action figures in general, and that is the choice to go with soft goods over the sculpted plastic. Now, I can totally understand that the sculpted plastic for some people looks-wise may be better. However, when I'm getting the more dynamic posing with the figures, especially having them sitting in vehicles, for example, it can be really difficult and really stiff when you have those soft plastic overlays as opposed to the soft goods. The soft goods do just a much better job, in my opinion, of laying more naturally. Gravity does a lot of assistance in posing the figures when you do that as well, and I think that overall they did a good job color matching the fabric here to the rest of the tunics. This is two separate layers here, so you can see that the two tabards that lay down here are one layer, and then underneath that is just one continuous piece for that lower skirt piece there. Overall, I think it was the right choice to go with on this figure. Underneath the soft goods here, you can see Obi-Wan's pants are pretty plain, and they do have a different sculpted texture than that of the tunics on the top here. So I will say that does give a good differentiation there, and that sculpted texture looks great with all the folds and wrinkles too. Now we get into my one, I guess, disappointment on this figure. This is something that I would even go as far as to call an eyesore in this case. When I lift the leg up here, bend the knee, you can see that the hinge for the knee right here is cut into the front of the boot, and they did the color of the hinge itself in the color of the pants and not in the color of the boot. This isn't something that I mind as much when it comes to the backside of a figure, just because, you know, if you're going for that bent pose, you're not going to see that piece anyway. However, if you bend the knee all the way, looking at the front here, that is just such an eyesore to me. I know nothing about what it takes to engineer an action figure and get all the different range of motion and things like that, what works and what doesn't, what's going to pass the tests for the safety guidelines and what's not, but I would like to think that they could have been able to make this hinge just a little bit shorter on the front, especially because, like, what am I doing? Hyperextending Obi-Wan's knee? I feel like that's the only purpose that serves of having that hinge at the front there. So aside from that, that's just my one thing on this figure that really just takes it from being a near perfect figure in my opinion. Aside from the very annoying look at the front of the boot there, the rest of the boot is sculpted really, really nicely. That faux leather look is done very well. Lots of little wrinkles and creases in that boot there to show that Obi-Wan's been using these for a while now. It's got a nice clean look, and you can see the tops of the boots look great as well. And then of course they did sculpt the outside of the soles of the boots, and overall, literally, aside from that knee hinge on the front, this figure looks just amazing. Now, as far as articulation goes on Obi-Wan here, he is a newer figure, so he's going to feature some of the newer articulation. So he does have a dumbbell joint at the neck. That means one ball joint goes into the top of the neck, one goes into the head, and you can get some great range out of that there. So you can make Obi-Wan look down a decent amount. You can also look up a fair amount as well. You can get some really nice tilt out of that head, as well as look right and look left. Then at the shoulders here, we have a hinge and swivel. So as you can see, the hinge gets you well past that 90-degree mark. The soft plastic overlay does a great job of moving itself right out of the way so it doesn't hinder any of that range. That's awesome to see. And then we have a 360-degree swivel at the shoulder as well. And once again, as you can see, as I move that around, the overlay moves itself right out of the way as it's supposed to there. At the elbows, we have another hinge and swivel, so that's going to get us to well past that 90-degree mark at the hinge, which is awesome for this scale. And then we have a swivel at the top of the elbow as well. Then at the wrists, we have another hinge and swivel. So at the right wrist, we have the swivel with a vertical hinge, which is a little bit limited due to the sculpting of the sleeves, but the sculpting of the sleeves is accurate to what we see in the media, so I guess it's a little give and take there. And then we have another vertical hinge here at the right wrist as well. At the waist, we have a ball joint here, and that's going to give us some decent range in any which direction, and you can see the overlays do a good job of moving themselves out of the way for that. Lifting up our soft goods here, you can see Obi-Wan's got a ball joint at the hips. That gives us some great range, and you can see with the soft goods down there, you can see that those move themselves right out of the way as well. We do have a cut for a thigh swivel sculpted in, so that's going to give us some great added range. And then we've got some single jointed knees here, so those get you to about the 90-degree mark, and then once again, You can see that hinge exposed on the front. We do have a swivel at the top of the knee as well. And then at the ankles, we have our Hasbro Classic, the forward-facing pin for rocker, as well as a hinge, which gets you some decent forward and some really nice back as well. So overall, other than that knee hinge, I'll bring it up one more time, that knee hinge is the only detractor on this figure. Other than that, perfect figure in my opinion. He looks amazing. I'm seriously blown away by the likeness on this guy, and the 3 3/4 scale truly keeps up with the 6-inch scale in the way of looks and articulation here. Alright, before I sit here and gush over this Obi-Wan figure any longer, I'm going to set him off to the side and talk about another great inclusion to this, being the 212th Airborne Trooper. Now, I have to say, the 212th Airborne is a trooper that I've been wanting to see in either the Vintage Collection or the Black Series for a really long time. This character has never been made in the Black Series line and hasn't been made in 3 3/4 since 2007 with his release in the Star Wars 30th Anniversary line. This trooper is on the newest Clone Trooper body for the Vintage Collection right now, and that is a trooper body that I absolutely adore, and he's got some extra odds and ends as far as overlays and soft goods parts, and I'm super excited to have this Revenge of the Sith clone added to the display. So let's take a look at this trooper up close. So one thing I will say that is definitely different than the older release is that this guy is a completely clean trooper. He does not feature any weathering of any sort. That does seem to be the theme with most of the newer clone troopers in the Vintage Collection, and you know what? I'm gonna say I would like them to just keep that consistency. I think what frustrates me more with action figure lines is when you have troopers that would go on a shelf together and one is weathered and then the rest are not, or maybe, you know, they're not weathered but the paint apps are all chipped up like they are weathered, and I think that I prefer this kind of consistency overall. You give me clean troopers with clean paint apps and then I can choose to weather them if I want to. I'm a person who doesn't care one way or the other. I don't mind having shinies on my shelf. Now this Airborne helmet looks amazing here. You can see the orange markings for the paratrooper here, and I will say I'm kind of going back and forth as to whether or not I think that the markings are too bright of an orange. I would say on the helmet in particular, they look a lot more like a highlighter orange, which is definitely too bright, but then we get this nice deep orange on the right shoulder armor here, and we get a nice more muted orange on the hand armor as well, and that is more what I'm looking for here. But ultimately, you know, I think overall the figure does look good. We have a nice glossy black paint app for the visor. At the chin filters here, we have some black as well as more orange markings around the chin filters. The sides here for the beehive helmet are also painted in black. We've got these little bits painted on either sides of the visor, and then there is that black stripe that goes around the back of the helmet, and you can see some really nice sculpted detail all around. This is a solid helmet, meaning there is no human head underneath. This is what I prefer these action figure lines do, as it keeps the troopers looking much more proportional than the figures that have the removable helmets. One of the new parts on this trooper is this left shoulder armor here. You can see that in addition to the paint apps for the markings, which I love that this trooper has markings that translate from one piece of the armor to the other here with the gaps. You can see they did also add this row of cartridges here that are painted in a nice gray. That is a new piece, and I believe that this left bicep armor is also a new piece as well. You can see they did sculpt in this little cartridge on the outside of the left bicep, and there are these bands that are actually not just painted but also sculpted in gray, so the entire upper arm is a completely new piece here for the left arm. As far as the right arm goes, it's just a standard Clone Trooper arm. Once again, as I pointed out, the right shoulder armor is painted in orange, and then you can see the comm pad is painted on the right gauntlet there. And then as far as the hands go, the right hand is sculpted with a trigger finger to hold the blasters, and then the left hand is sculpted in a C gripping hand. Now the torso's got quite a bit going on here, so you've got multiple layers of overlays here, and that is something that I think is really cool. So one of these overlays is his satchel that he has, or his messenger bag, if you will, his merce, if you will. This is done in a nice flexible plastic in a nice gray sculpt. You can see that on the bag itself, he's got some silver cartridges painted on there, and you can also see both ends of the silver cartridges on the front of the bandolier are also painted. Those look great, and I like that this isn't fixed to the figure, so you could honestly remove it from the figure if you really wanted to. It can come completely off here. You can put it right back on, no problem. It sits really naturally underneath the helmet here, right on the shoulder, and it doesn't seem to affect the articulation of the helmet either. This is a slam dunk as far as an accessory goes. And then of course we have this other overlay here. Now this one seems to be connected to the belt, meaning that as far as I know, this is another new piece for this character here, this whole overlay. You can see he's got this little extra pauldron over the chest that's painted in a nice glossy black with an orange stripe over it. You're going to notice that the orange is a little bit darker than the orange on the rest of the figure, just because they painted orange over black. That just is what it is. You can see they also painted the gray for the strapping because the base plastic here does appear to be white. However, they did a really good job color matching the strapping for the pauldron with the strapping to the satchel here. They did a great job of that. Other than the usual detail on the back of the carapace, nothing really to note as far as the sculpted detail goes. And you can see this is where the back of this strapping does connect to this pouch here on the back of the belt. On the abdomen of the trooper here, we have one orange stripe, and then we have some more unique orange markings on some of the ammo boxes on the front of the belt here. Very nicely done. You can see just the regular sculpted detail and then the thermal detonator on the back of the belt as well. At the bottom of the belt, you can also see these little straps here that wrap around the legs, and these straps are part of the comma setup for the Revenge of the Sith style clone troopers. And you can see the comma itself is done in a nice soft goods material. I think the color for this is perfect. I think that this is exactly the color that we see in the movie, if not very close to, especially for this small of an action figure scale. I think this is done very well, and it's of course fastened underneath that overlay for the belt. It all sits very nicely and very naturally, and I'm very, very happy with this decision as opposed to sculpted plastic. And then from the waist down, this is just the same clone trooper that we've been getting with a lot of recent clone trooper releases. So you have just the base clone trooper armor for the thighs, and then the knee armor and the lower leg armor is all one piece. They did paint the unit specific markings on the left thigh as well as the right knee armor, and then you can see the left knee armor is in solid orange, and then you can see that we get down to the clone trooper boots, which are just that standard stark white. And this guy's going to fit in nicely with a lot of our recent clone troopers here, our plain phase 2s, our shock troopers, our 501st, our 332nds, all the troopers that do not feature that removable helmet and are on this most recent clone trooper body. These guys are all going to look great together. All right guys, let's take a look at the Airborne's articulation. So if you've seen any of my reviews of the clone troopers on the newest TVC sculpt, you'll know what you're getting into. There are maybe one or two minor differences. So first thing, we have a dumbbell joint at the top of the neck. So one ball joint goes into the top of the neck, one goes into the head. You can see you'll get some great circular motion out of that. We can get our trooper to look down a fair amount. He can also look up just a little bit depending on how you position the helmet. You can get some good tilt side to side, even with the strapping for the satchel there, and you can get some right and some left. As far as the shoulders go, we have a hinge and swivel. Now what I love about this new clone trooper body is that what you can do with the shoulder armor, even though they are glued to the bicep, is you can get them to sit underneath the carapace, or you can lift them up and have them sit over the carapace, and it's great to have that option. However, with this new shoulder armor here, you have to have it sit above the carapace there. You can't squeeze this underneath due to these extra cartridges on the top of the shoulder here. However, this does a good job of being able to still get you that 90 degrees of range without warping the shoulder armor or making it so that the character can't still look straight. Of course, we have a 360-degree swivel as well, and you can see that on both arms you can get that full range of motion without the overlays hindering that. At the elbows, we do have another hinge and swivel. That's going to get us to about a 90-degree bend, maybe a little bit more than that, and then we have a swivel at the top of the elbow. At the right wrist, we have a hinge and swivel, so we get that swivel with a vertical hinge, and then at the left wrist we get the swivel with the horizontal hinge. At the midsection here, we have a ball joint about midway through the torso separating the carapace from the abdomen armor. That's going to get us some decent range. You can see with all the overlays here, everything moves itself out of the way pretty nicely. It doesn't really hinder the articulation at all. Down at the hips, we have a ball joint here. You can see that the comma doesn't hinder that at all either. It's a benefit to having the soft goods there. And then we have a thigh swivel, which is cleverly hidden underneath the thigh armor, giving us some added range. So what I love about this figure is that even with the thighs facing forward, you can bring those legs up forward about 90 degrees. But if you want to get even more range, you can bring that off to the side and you can get those even higher. So that's great to have. Then at the knees, we have a hinge and swivel again. So we have a 90-degree bend on the hinge there, and then we have a swivel at the top of the knee. Then down at the ankles, once again, our Hasbro classic, a forward-facing pin for rocker, as well as a hinge, which gets you just a little bit of forward and plenty of back. So overall, I love the articulation scheme on this newer clone trooper, and I'm going to be honest, we have two figures here that look phenomenal and also articulate very well as well. All right, I think it's about time we get these guys posed up. So of course, with Obi-Wan here, I want to get him with his lightsaber on the belt first, because for my display, he's going to have lightsaber in hand here. So you can see that the lightsaber fits really nicely on the belt, looks pretty proportionate. It does pass the shake test as well, and I just love that metallic shine of the lightsaber on the figure. It really, really pops. Of course, though, with Obi-Wan, we're going to want him with lightsaber in hand here, so let's get him posed up. Of course, most Jedi cross-draw their lightsabers, so Obi-Wan's going to be right-handed, so we're going to be able to fit that lightsaber into the hand pretty nicely. You can see he does hold it closer to the base just because of the way that the sleeve is sculpted, but if you spin his hand around just a little bit, you can get more of a centered grip on that lightsaber, and it does pass the shake test. As far as our Airborne Trooper goes, we're going to give him his DC 15 first here, because I am going to probably pose him with the carbine instead. That's what we see him with on screen in the movie. That sits nicely in that right hand, does pass the shake test. And here we have both of our figures in just some basic poses here. These guys are both amazing. I'm absolutely blown away by how good these guys look in just the most basic of poses. Here we've got a little bit more of a dynamic pose for both our figures here. You can see we've got our Airborne Trooper in a nice kneeling pose here, and he can shoulder the blaster with no problem at all, even with multiple overlays, and then Obi-Wan in a two-handed lightsaber holding pose in more of a ready stance. All right, now let's check out the swappable hand on Obi-Wan here. So that's going to be for the left hand, so you kind of got to grab him by the fingers there. However, thankfully, the plastic on the fingers is very stretchy, and the peg does pop out pretty easily. Popping the new hand in is just as easy to do, and you can get that hinge to work pretty nicely. We can get a great force push look for Obi-Wan here. And then, of course, for the Airborne here, you can see we can get the carbine into the hand very nicely as well. Trigger finger fits in the trigger guard nicely, and he does pass the shake test. And here are two just amazing one-legged running poses for both these characters. Great center of gravity on both, and they just give to such natural posing here, charging into the battlefield. But with that, guys, I'm gonna have to stop myself from continuing to pose these figures. I could sit here and pose these all day. This is where TVC is going into 2026. This quality, this articulation, this sculpt work is just phenomenal on both of these figures, and it's a big reason that I'm continuing to get more and more into the TVC line. Character selection like this, and when the figures are this consistently good along with that kind of character selection, I'm in all the way. This is absolutely a pack I recommend worth getting. I definitely recommend getting it sooner rather than later, because if you don't get it soon, it's definitely going to sell out and it's going to become pretty hard to get pretty quickly. But with that, guys, I hope you enjoyed this review. If you did and you're not yet subscribed, subscribe to Blitz Transmissions. I've got awesome Star Wars content coming out all the time. If you're an ARC Trooper in my Patreon, you would have seen this review early. If you'd like access to early content, monthly giveaways, and other awesome benefits, the link to my Patreon is in the description below. Become an ARC Trooper for just $4.99 a month. If you're a fan of the reviews I do here on YouTube, or you just want to support the YouTube channel more directly, you could also check out my YouTube channel membership, Rancor Battalion. For just 99 cents a month, it gives you access to exclusive badges, priority replies in my comment section, you get to vote on what I review next for the channel, just like the Patreon members do, and you get to check out all my reviews early here on YouTube. If you'd like some Blitz Transmissions swag, you could always head over to the Blitz Transmissions Armory over on Printify. Link to that is in the description below, as well as links to my Discord and all my social media. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this review. I'll catch you for the next one, and may the Force be with you.
Breaking off all units, fire at will. 1-2, pick your targets. Too many, Captain. Watch your stabilizer, Gold 6. Anybody cover me. I got two vultures on my tail. You've got to hold them here. Watch your left. I can't shake them. I'm hit. I'm hit.